What does it take to be a successful entrepreneur? A dangerous amount of coffee and a ton of grit. My name is Jason Tracy, and every week I interview business leaders to share their stories, life lessons, failures, and advice with you. Welcome to Coffee and Grit. Ooh, let's go. Let's go. I'm super, that roar gives me every time. What is up? What is up? Welcome back to another episode of Coffee and Grit. I am so excited for the guest that we have today. This guy is the visionaries visionary. I loved, I was reading his LinkedIn profile. It's Gino Wickman called and said he was a flamboyant visionary. Flaming visionary. I absolutely love it as we're sitting here just talking about the passion of moving visionaries, right? Because they're the ones creating all the amazing stuff out in the world. And we're going to talk about so many amazing things, but I love how Bob was just saying, like, we live in the greatest time possible right now. And so I'm excited to kind of unpack that and talk about the things that he's doing right now that are really changing the world. Also, Bob is the author of the book. I think you have several books, right?
I do.
But this book is called Unscatter the Chatter, and he gifted me with this. So I'm so excited to read it when I get home. So welcome, Bob. Welcome to the Coffee and Grit.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
My pleasure. My pleasure. It's thank you for the drive down. It's always awesome when people take a little road trip.
Right. Well, it's great to be in a real studio and have a microphone and a speaker to slow me down and quiet me down a little bit more. So I appreciate that.
It's like when we hear the voice, right? We know when to stop talking. Right. Man, I'm so excited because we talked a little bit when we were on the Zoom call, a month or so ago, and we've been able to talk and get caught up with what you're doing now.
Right.
Can you tell me, just rewind back a little bit, how did you get started, and how did you find out that you were a visionary's visionary?
So I can sell, I can inspire, and I like to have fun. So my first couple jobs I could sell and grew, and then the company I worked for did what a lot of companies do, and they took their top salesperson and made me a manager. And it was horrible. I wasn't good at it. I didn't like it. I couldn't sleep on Sunday nights when I had to go into work the next day. And I also got high up enough in that company that we didn't have set established core values, but the core values weren't mine. And so I saw an opportunity and started my own business, and I can sell and I can inspire and motivate, and I like to have fun. So I grew my business somewhat out of control. And
sounds like we're on similar paths.
We went from 0 to 5 million in 3.5-4 years, and it was crazy. And I met a gentleman by the name of Gino Wickman in our EO. It was our YEO forum back then, because I still think it was a branding mistake getting rid of the Y, because I think I'll always feel like I'm young. But so in EO, and then watching Gino turn his dad's company around and realize that there was a very common theme that the founders who he helped us to figure out were visionaries, were good at what we do, especially inspiring, selling, and having fun, and yet most of us weren't taught how to have business, and we almost don't want to learn how to have a business. We want to, again, inspire and sell and have fun. So watching Gino do that, and then him looking around our forum table and saying, "I can help you, I can help you, I can help you," and so I had the great fortune of being a great friend of his, learning about business with him, learning about life with him. He created EOS, the business operating system, the entrepreneur operating system, and I created iMatter, which is a life operating system. So he helped me, though, with my business before I started iMatter, where he helped me to realize that there's a place for a visionary in a business, and he called me a visionary. And I'm just like, yeah, okay, but I'm not good at managing. I don't like numbers. I don't have patience. He's like, but that's okay if you have a structure and the right people around you. And that was a game changer for me, that I could be myself and have fun, inspire, and sell. And so that was a huge opportunity. So that's when I realized I was a visionary, and then to sell a few businesses, and then working with other visionaries, not only to help them on the business side, to have them realize that they are a visionary, what their role is in the business is huge. But also what I've realized is I'm a visionary, not just in my business, but in life. And so that's not an excuse, but it is, we visionaries are the cause of and cure of all of life's problems. And it's not easy to live with us or work with us. And yet when we get the right structure and have the trust, it's amazing to have a visionary and a team both at work and at home. A lot of us visionaries that have a vision and they don't come true, it's devastating. And it's literally questioning life in a lot of ways, not to get too dramatic, which some of us visionaries tend to do or be. But it's, I can see so clearly, it's like, it shouldn't be that hard. And so, but we're not the ones doing it. And if we are the ones doing it, it can really suck.
Yeah.
And that's where, I started this business and I saw that you had an issue. I came up with an idea, sold you on it. And now if I have to deliver it, blah. And this, again, I'm stereotyping, but it's often very true. And so to have that team and that process and to step into our greatness. And a lot of times, again, people are like, well, what am I supposed to do? It's like, well, what you're great at and love. It's like, yeah. And for me, it's what I'm great in love is I would take my clients out and drink and have fun and dream, but then they trusted me and I would pull ideas out of them and help them. And that's what helped us grow our business. And it was fun. It's like, okay, this is amazing.
You're just having fun and all of a sudden your company's hitting 5 million.
Right. Oh, and I couldn't sleep. We grew out of control. We were working 15-hour days. And again, we grew out of control, which was great, but we didn't have the systems in place. So we didn't have the reporting. We're running along, and all of a sudden, my biggest vendor said, you owe us $750,000. It's like, oh, that was a rough day. And so, but to then put the platform and the process and the procedures and get the right people and be clear on what we needed, be clear on what we expected of them. And then the big thing is to have someone to manage them that wasn't me. So that was huge.
What did that look like at the beginning?
That looked like coming in at 5 a.m. and running around and double checking everything and making sure then that, okay, we got to make payroll, and then being up at night wondering if we got certain things done. It was literally, I wasn't depressed, but I was really struggling. And that's when iMatter was born, which is our life operating system. And I literally remember when you asked what that looks like, is it was a holiday season, sitting around the table a week or two before the holidays, watching the Packers beat the Lions again, which has changed, which is kind of cool.
It is. It's really cool.
Yeah. But just like trembling and sweating and just saying, if these people knew how much pressure I was under, they couldn't even believe it. But then I realized, I'm like, you know what? I have a roof over my head. I've got family that loves me. This isn't the end of my life. And even my uncle, when I've been through some things, he's like, at least no one died. And so to really get perspective, and that's when iMatter, which is our life operating system, was born, where I started to realize, okay, to start to realize what matters most, clarify who I am, and follow my North Star. So my what, why, and how. So to say, okay, this is what I'm here for. And the worst thing that could happen is maybe I file bankruptcy. Maybe we have to let some people go, but to realize, okay, it's going to be okay. And that's where I also started to gain more on believing in faith and trust that it is all going to work out if I put my best foot forward and I'm honest and I do the right things. And we pulled ourselves out of it. And that's when I became a leader, is when we were going to merge with my partner's company, because I'm just like, okay, we can't do this. We're out of cash. And I told my team that we were going to merge with them. And they're like, okay, I get it. And then my legal team, my CPA, lawyer, and merger and acquisition person were like, you're not that far away. You've kind of bridged the gap and you're close. And they talked me into not merging. And when I told my team, they cheered. And I said, hey, gang, this is not going to be easy. And so literally for 6 months, my bank was in Chicago. And so I would call at 9 o'clock our time. 10 o'clock our time, because they would open at 9. And I knew we were negative 10,000 on the books, or negative 20. And I'm like, so where are we at? And the actual in our bank would be like, you're up 12,000, Mr. Shenefelt. It's like, whew, we're living another day. We did that for 6 months. And if we were below zero, I had a day to get that money. And so for 6 months, living that, where literally we would get prepays from people, we were delaying people as far as paying them. It was horrible. And yet it taught me faith and belief and honesty with my team, honesty with our clients. I had some big clients and they're like, hey, we're net 45. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm prepaying 60% of what you're paying me ahead of time. And they're like, well, that's not our problem. But then I said, all right, well, can you do a deposit or whatever? And they're like, yeah, you guys are so good. Yeah, we'll help you out. And that helped us to get through that bridge.
That's awesome. And like that vulnerability. And I talked to you beforehand, like the stories are the data of a soul. And I think this is so powerful for listeners is to have that conversation and be vulnerable in that sense of like, this is where we're at and this is what we need.
Right.
Because yeah, you're net 45, but we're taking on 60% of your cost.
Right. And they wouldn't move it sooner, like to pay net 14, but they were like, I'm like, all right, if you don't pay for a month and a half and you do 50 grand a month, can you just put 75 grand on deposit? And they're like, yeah, we trust you. It's like, oh, that was cool. And that was a huge opportunity for us that they believed in us. And again, as a visionary, part of my role is the cheerleader, and it's all going to be okay. And the realist, that, hey, this is the situation. So if you don't do your job, you're not going to work here. If we don't make money, we have to do things different. And yet, here's the vision, and we can do it if we all do what we need to, and we are being who we are and delivering amazing value. Hey, here's the moon that we can shoot for.
I love how you're like, I became a leader, and then I can see that line clearly because you're the guy that likes to sell, motivate, have fun, right? And then it's on that other end is it's not fun necessarily holding people accountable or telling that cold truth.
Right. And that's true with any relationship. It's, hey, so one of the things that we have in our book, it's a bit of a process, but it's to imagine and improve and impact. So imagine this great future. And I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I kind of know the feeling around it. So whether it be with my wife or my kids or my business to say, imagine if we could provide this kind of service and we had this kind of satisfaction with our clients and we could grow and bring on other amazing people on our team and we could have amazing marketing or whatever. Okay, so I'm imagining this because most of us as humans are worried about the future. That's the job of the ego, is to keep us safe. So you can't do anything too crazy because you might get laughed at or hurt or told no. But if I imagine that future and I'm not really worried about it, but in my conscious and subconscious, it's like, the future's awesome. And not to be too married to the exact what or how, but the why. And then that's the imagine. And then to improve on the past so it's not regretting. And it's like, oh, I should have done this. I wish this would have happened. And so then if I'm not worrying or regretting, I'm much more apt to impact this moment right now. And that to me is what it's all about. It's being present, being in love, being intentional. And even like with these headphones and this microphone, it's helped me to slow down, but it's like, oh, I'm connecting with you and what is going on in your head and your heart. In my upbringing, our family was the happy family, which was great. And it's a good defense mechanism, but we shoved emotions down. So it's like something is weird. It might be sadness. And my mom would be like, you have a great life. And I'm like, well, yeah, I do. So you don't need to be sad. So I shoved down some of those emotions, which were the lower vibration, maybe not negative, but some people think they're negative. But then I also shoved down some of the positive ones. And that's the joy and the love and the freedom and the courage and whatnot. And so ultimately, to be open about things, not just everything's great, which is the way I used to be. And I still think most things are great. Like, this is the greatest time ever to be alive. Well, dude, look at all the divisiveness and the separation. And for me, it's like, yeah, but we... look at all the things that we have in our lives and look at the opportunities. And to me, it's kind of the redoing of what the revolutionaries, the founding fathers did when we left Europe and left the tyranny of the kingdoms and the churches who squashed our individuality and our free spirit and lack of judgment. And we created this country. And so we as visionaries, to me, it's our opportunity now, maybe even our obligation to say, okay, what could a great world look like for our kids, for our employees, and going from doing to being. And that's a big shift, even for me. I'm still, I still like to get up early, and I feel guilty if I'm not, on the phone all the time. And it's like, I don't need to. It's just be me. And so that's what a lot of Unscatter the Chatter is to unscatter that negative chatter saying you should be at work. And, what if everything goes wrong? What if you run out of money? It's like, okay, you know what? Today I'm fine. I'm not going to run out of money today. And maybe not for a few weeks or a few months, even if everything goes wrong. But if I'm present, then there might be a spark that you and I have an idea, or you have an opportunity for me, or I have one for you. And that is amazing. That is success, is being present and helping each other to step into our greatness and live a great fucking life. Hopefully we can say that a couple times today.
Absolutely. I love it. I love it. And I was just sharing the story with Cameron a couple weeks ago when we were talking about losing a loved one and coming up to the holidays and stuff like that. And I shared a story of when we lost my grandma. My grandma was like a second mom to me and was like the matriarch of our family. Right. All the holiday events were at her house, all that kind of stuff. Right. And so she's obviously a big loss. My mom was really, really close to my grandma. Like her best friend, like really, really close. She was, mourning really, really hard around Thanksgiving. And it was like mid Thanksgiving, I'm present. I'm thinking about the family and the people we have around us. My mom, I notice, is, really wrapped up in who's not there.
Right.
And I had a conversation with her one-on-one. It's like, as we're focusing on so much of, grandma not being here, or, who's not here, you're missing the time with the people that are here.
Yep.
And then, God forbid, something happens to somebody.
Right.
And you remember that you weren't present because you were thinking about who wasn't here. And it's a vicious cycle of that regret.
Right.
So be present, create memories, be happy about the people that are here.
Yep. No, absolutely. And it's tough to say no to opportunities because, I really want to do that. Okay, well, what matters more? Because we can't do everything.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your story about your grandma, and sorry for your loss. But yes, so often we're distracted, either thinking, and again, the chatter going on, or our devices, and then that to me was the real virus. It's just, and the addictions that we have, that many of us have, that take us away from the pain. Because your grandma not being there, it's painful.
Yeah.
And so it's okay. I love, one of my 3 favorite books is Letting Go by David Hawkins. And my wife and I have listened to that 4 times, and I figured out finally what the process was, that it's to acknowledge the emotion, accept it, and we automatically transform to a higher vibration. So there was sadness and maybe some regret or shame or guilt or pride or whatever it might be. And yet if I don't experience it, it stays. And it's going to be brought back up to us again in another form until I realize that. So to express, I just dropped my son off right after Thanksgiving, going back to college. My wife and I dropped him off, and we were more sad then when we took him to college back in August. And we went right to my mom's, who was, again, the happy family. And I said, well, we're sad. We dropped off Nick. And sure enough, she said, yeah, but he's happy. And I'm like, yes, he is.
Yeah.
I'm sad.
Yeah.
And sure enough, my wife were sad for a couple hours, and we still get sad, but it's like, you know what? We miss him, and that's okay.
It's okay.
And he misses us.
Yeah.
And yet it is time for him, as he's now 19, and he has had a vision for his life on what does that look like, and he went for it. And it's not easy, and he's missing home and whatnot, and yet as and my daughter just got married this summer, so it's been a big whack of kind of moving to another stage in our lives. And so now we have our 5.5-year-old golden doodle Brady, who's awesome, but we're empty nesters. And so my wife and I are kind of like, we're going through a lot of grieving over the last 90 days, and yet letting it go and then stepping into the next stage of our lives. And just no regrets of the past, and starting to imagine our future. And what does that look like?
It's huge. I love the experiences of, the happy family, right? Because you're not the only family, and there's like, put the smile on your face. Right. So, and I think it's even like natural reactions of even friends. Sure. They come in and you're just down, and they want to cheer you up, and so they're telling you all these things.
Right.
Does that really make you feel good though at the end?
And again, if I see you for 30 seconds, I probably don't want to hear, and I don't like either myself or hearing about, it's raining outside. Okay, it is. And that kind of sucks. But if you don't like it that much, then move. But if it's a trusted confidant that's when there's a time to do it. And again, I don't mean to be dwelling on the negatives or the lower vibrations, but that's just what I'm clearing out right now. And I didn't finish my story about as I was experiencing some sadness, it's like I was experiencing amazing joy.
Yes.
And I realized I was missing out on some of the joy as well. So this isn't all about being, life sucks. It's no, life doesn't suck. Life is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So for your grandma to pass, I miss her. And let's celebrate who she was and that we had time. And what can I learn from that to be present with who's here, with other people who are older, who are around us? How can we be present for them and with them and for ourselves? And how can we be present with our kids?
5,000%. I love it, the switching, because I didn't even mean to bring up even the low vibrations. It's just kind of thinking about it, because I think there's a lot of pressure in society of like to put the smile on your face, and then it causes that.
And social media,
just put the Band-Aids on. Look at me, right? And then at the same time, and all the things that we've talked about, it makes me think of like, we talked about it's the greatest time to be alive. Right. Because you have social media, because there's these things. So social media is a great resource. It's a great tool that helps us make this the greatest time alive, but also it can be used in the negative and as a weapon. And I think about something like water, right? Water is the most natural thing that we can consume, but if we drink enough of it, too much of it, we can die. If it leaks into our house, it ruins our stuff.
Right.
So you look at different things, like if it's used the wrong way, it can be destructive.
Right.
But it's also the healthiest thing for us.
Right. Well, I call this the wisdom age. And I've been calling it that for 20 years, that we're coming into that. So we had the agricultural age for thousands of years, industrial for hundreds, technology, internet for the last couple decades. And whenever we hit the ceiling of complexity as we're going into a different stage, it's turbulent and it's awkward and it's sad. And so yet we come busting through that. And that's what we're coming out of now, which is I don't know if crashing is the right word, but the change of the bureaucracies of the world, whether it be education or healthcare or government or whatever it might be. And that's just natural. And so yet a lot of people are trying to hold on to it. And so then there is divisiveness and control and force and whatnot. And yet to me, it's like, and people are like, well, it doesn't seem very wise. And it's like, well, let me explain. It's when I'm present and I'm not being judged or judging you. And Dr. Bill Isaacs wrote a great book called Dialogue, The Art of Learning Together. And I had a chance to study with him years ago. And that was such a great learning experience that if I'm not judged and I share what's going on in my head and I can hear myself think and you can hear me think, I may or may not convince you to vote this way or to believe in this or that. But it's like, wow, I never really thought about that. So if I'm hearing you, I'm learning. But the biggest thing is I'm hearing me. So that's where, again, if in my head, I'm like, oh my God, we're going to run out of money, to like, when I say that, I'm like, we're actually not going to run out of money. But that's the chatter.
Yeah.
And the chatter is not usually positive. And again, the ego is here to keep us safe. And it's like, don't try anything. Don't step out. Someone might laugh at you or you might fail. And so the wisdom age is about creating communities, creating connection with other humans, and having a safe space to hear ourselves think. And that could be a lower vibration emotion and a positive one. I mean, sometimes I'm embarrassed to say how good things are going, especially because I think, well, what if, okay, you just lost your grandma. I can't be too excited.
Yeah. Yep.
But it's like, wait a minute, I want to share what my son is doing and how my business is going, and life is fucking great. And sometimes people are like, it's like, but so to have those relationships, peer groups where it's not only can we be that, it's expected to be that, because we're coming to learn with each other, learn from each other, be there for each other, connect each other. Ben Franklin during the Revolutionary War, and again, the creation of a new free country, the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, had a group called Junto. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced. Junto, Junto. Yep. And it was every Friday they'd have a grog of ale and say, okay, how do we protect our freedom? Hey, did you hear that Jason's business is rocking? How can we help him? Did you hear Bob needs help? How can we? And it's like, oh my gosh, humans coming together. And that's the next, so to get a little out there, universally, that's the next great connection, is humans connecting with each other. And magic happens when we do connect, as opposed to, well, if I tell you this, you might steal my idea. Like, come on, man. Come on. Yeah. So it is trusting each other and ultimately trusting ourselves and trusting God or whatever that might be for people, that it's all going to work out, even if it doesn't seem like it.
Well, and I look at stuff like that, even like it takes It takes us all. You talk about like the visionaries changing the world, or this being that would you call it the intellectual
Wisdom age?
Wisdom age.
Yep.
It takes multiple of us. It's not one. I'm not saving the world.
Nope.
Not everybody even agrees with me, or not everybody's my person,
And that's okay.
And that's
right.
okay. That's great. I only want to work with certain people.
Right.
And so. It takes so much more than that one person. That's how I look at like how can we all come together and collaborate and create an experience that impacts the world.
And it's interesting because it's like, of course, I've got the Visionary Forum, which you're aware of as a peer group for visionaries, purpose-driven visionaries who are ready for and committed to exponential growth, not just in their business, but in their lives. And so that has been an amazing place where people are like, wait, I can be me here? And sometimes, and it's not that their families or their businesses don't allow them to be themselves, but it's like, oh, they put me in a box. We usually put ourselves in a box.
Yeah.
And so to have these communities, and that's what's happening. When I created the Visionary Forum, I'm like, it's going to be 5,000 members and we're going to change the world. And it's like, okay, slow down, dude. And what I'm realizing, we talked about this a while ago, that each of us have our own communities. So for us, we're basically community leaders helping each other to learn how to create great relationships, to learn how to trust, to learn how to be ourselves, and to be applauded for it. And then as we're creating our communities in our neighborhoods or our businesses or industry groups or whatever, it's like, wow, what happened to Bob? It's like, he seems present. He seems, and a big thing for me is to create experience and spread peace, joy, and freedom. And so I've been creating a lot of it, but I haven't always been experiencing those. And so to slow down and experience it, and then now to spread it. And so, and again, in the voice in my head, if you ask me, it's like, yeah, life is great, and here's what's going on. And I'm like, yeah, but it's like, okay, no buts. That's another book coming up. No, but it's just like celebrate the now. And again, don't ignore, okay, we have some bills to pay next week, or we have an employee who's not happy, or whatever it might be, but it's that being present thing. And again, it's creating connection and communities. So that to me is the wisdom age that, what if we all could speak our mind and not judge each other and not be separate, say, you voted for what? Or you did this, so it's like, like my family, we don't all agree on everything. But we've agreed that we love each other, we have fun together, and we want to be there for each other. So we just set those things aside. I'm not going to convince them, and they're not going to convince me.
Yeah. But we love each other at the end of the day.
Yeah. Now, if someone's going to be divisive or attack me, okay, maybe I won't be around them.
Yeah.
But it's, so again, I think community is huge. And I'm realizing there's a lot of visionaries who are creating their craft. And to me, I define craft as teaching what we are learning. So what I'm still learning is how to know and act like I matter. And that means it may sound selfish, but if I know that I matter and I act like it, means I am going to exercise or drink more water, and that my marriage really matters. And so to slow down and take care of myself, because it's like the oxygen mask. I can help 2 or 3 people, but if I take the oxygen mask, which may seem selfish, I can help 5 or 6 people.
Yep.
And so that's my craft, is helping people to know and act like they matter. And then I thought, oh, you're going to come on board and be a coach for I Matter. It's like, no, what is your craft? And I'm finding a lot of visionaries, they may come and be a coach or a consultant in their industry, but a lot of them, at the end of the day, the root of it is helping, something that they're learning. One of my clients had big health issues as a young adult, and he figured some things out, and he created a company around it. And so it's not just selling supplements, it's teaching people about health, which he's still learning. So that's so cool that you're learning your craft, I'm learning mine. And I love our tagline for the Visionary Forum, it's, we don't network to each other, we network for each other. And that is so cool that you're not selling me, but you're like, hey, dude, that is really cool. And if you understand my why, what, and how, and what my target market is, you might introduce me to someone. That's cool marketing. Community is, to me, the next marketing. It's about trust. And, Bob doesn't do that, but he does this. And if you introduce me to someone, I may talk them out of using me if I'm not a fit.
Yeah.
But if you trusted me with that introduction, I'm going to handle that with kid gloves and give them a hug and make sure you say, that was amazing. I want to refer you to more people.
Yep.
So community is huge.
Community is huge. And I love this. Like we didn't even get into this in our conversation, but you're hitting like all the coffee and grit criteria. It's like
in one breath.
In one breath, because we live in the greatest time. We have access to, we can reach more people and build bigger communities because, or have quality communities because we can find the right people.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's the people that are our greatest resources. It's our greatest asset, really.
Right. Greatest joy.
Greatest joy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is an amazing time to be alive. And that doesn't mean there's not divisiveness. And I didn't finish my thought on letting go. What David Hawkins talks about is as I acknowledge and accept an emotion, and that might be shame or anger or fear or pride. I didn't realize that was a lower vibration, because if I don't let go of my pride to say, no, I'm right, or I'm not going to let go of this, well, then I'm not open and I'm being judgmental. But once we get to courage, that's when it starts to become a higher vibration. So it's like, okay, I mean, when we got locked down for whatever reason that was a scary time.
Yeah.
And I remember like walking in the park with my wife and I'm like, we are so screwed. And yet, as I started to share that, and she didn't try to solve my solution, and she didn't have a solve, as usually most of us don't for each other, but I got it out of my head.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, and I was angry, and I was sad, and all of a sudden, it's like, but we could do it. And what if we do this? And once we get to courage, then we can get into the love and the peace and whatnot. So I just want to finish that on letting go. That was a huge book for me.
It's like getting past that emotion, the original emotion. Is that what that is, or?
Yeah, it's if we don't let it go through us, and we aren't our emotions, but our emotions are, a trigger for us.
Yep.
And again, it's often those negative ones or the lower vibration ones. It's the opportunity. Every anger, fear, and frustration is a learning opportunity. So I don't look forward to those. But if I lose a client or didn't get a deal, it's like, okay, what is my learning in this? Not regret necessarily, but what could I do differently? Or it's how was I, not to blame, but how could it be perceived that I was to blame? And so we call it flip it in our book. It's to take an emotion and think about it, acknowledge it, accept it, and sit with it. I used to be like, I used to be ashamed that I didn't have all positive emotions. I'm the positive guy.
Yeah.
And so, and again, it doesn't have to be forever, but just to experience it. And then our trick is to flip it, is to go back to a time that reminds me of. So it might be when my dad didn't show up for a baseball game because his flight got in late or something. And it's like, it wasn't that big of a deal, but it was. So if an emotion reminds me of that, I think about those emotions, think about that time, sit with it, and then forgive him, forgive myself. And then knowing what I know now, what could I have done differently then? And it's like, forgive my dad, appreciate him that he was making money. It wasn't his fault. He wanted to be there as much as I wanted him there. And then knowing what I know now, what can I do differently today? And it's amazing how often it's like, well, knowing what I know is my wife suggested something and she only wants the best for me or my son or my client or whatever it may be. And so again, emotions to me are a learning opportunity, a trigger to say, hey dude, you have an opportunity to shift and grow.
Yep. That's awesome. It's like the red flag.
Right. Exactly. And it's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Because I used to be like, damn it, why did this happen? It's like, okay, what's my opportunity here? And again, there's the positive.
I was going through this period of time, and it's still a trigger that hits me every now and then, where I was like on the road, or I was driving from here to there, and like getting stuck when traffic would get stuck. I'd get like my blood pressure would rise. I'm getting mad, or like a meeting is running over time. What I identified it was funny because it was a guest that was on the podcast. It said something about when you have an expectation for time. I can't remember exactly what his quote was. And it was like several months before this is happening to me. And I'm like riding in the car and I'm getting mad at like the traffic in front of me. And then I remembered what he said. And it's kind of that unpacking of, wow, I'm really getting triggered to that when my time is being sucked. I'm getting upset. My blood pressure is rising. Right. And like being aware of that helped me move past it. And then when it was coming on again, like asking questions and calming myself down.
Right. Yeah. And it's like getting mad at the driver who went soon. It's like, geez, lighten up.
Lighten up.
I mean, it's not hurting them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
It's I forget the proverb or whatever, when the the person helped the girl across the river and she didn't say thank you. And the one person is saying, she didn't do this. And it's like, okay, but I let her go and I dropped her off. You haven't let her go. And she didn't do that. And believe me, I'm still working my way through that because, if I wave and someone doesn't wave back, I flip them off. It's like, okay, that doesn't help.
Yep.
They might be busy. They might be preoccupied. They may be shy, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And what we put out to the universe, we get back. So if I'm putting out anger, fear, frustration, what am I getting back? It's like, why does this keep happening? Okay, well, because I'm thinking it and calling it forth. Whereas, again, if I'm imagining a great future that the right deal is going to come up or the right person's going to show up for my son or whatever it might be, it's amazing how often that happens because what we put out to the universe does come back to us.
Mine's a terrible servant, terrible master, excellent servant.
Right.
From that standpoint of like if you're having a bad day,
right,
it's because you're collecting it. It's
right.
because your mood is vibrating and attracting a certain.
Yep. Well, I like my second favorite book is Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, and one of the things that I got from that is why are we taking advice from our ego? It takes both sides and it never stops. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't do this. You should do that. And it's like, why am I listening? Now, it's okay to listen, especially for fight or flight, that my ego is going to say, don't cross the road because that car is speeding. Okay, that's worthy of listening. But if it's, don't make that phone call or don't ask for the business or don't ask her for a date or whatever it may be, it's my son asked a girl out and they went out a couple times and then she didn't want to move forward recently. And it's like, and yet he realizes, okay, it's a long distance thing. It probably isn't going to work. And yet what he's realizing is he would rather try and put himself out there and then learn that he can love. And there's no shortness of abundance of love. So it's not like if I put all my love toward you, then I have nothing else. It's to me, the more love I put out, the more I get. It's exponential.
Absolutely. It's why people want to be around certain people.
Right.
It's the way they make them feel, right?
Yep.
And you probably attracted that your whole life.
Absolutely, and thank you. And also to learn that I attract a lot of people, but I don't have to serve everybody.
Ooh.
Because that's been a big issue is it's like, okay, you want my time or I can sell you something. And at the end of the day, I'm not the right fit for you.
Absolutely.
Or I'm going to miss my daughter's band or whatever it might be. So again, it's realizing what matters most, clarifying who I am and following my North Star. So it's like, dude, I'd love to help you. I just can't right now. And to understand that, but to put out that vibration of, and if I can help, if I can refer you to someone else or whatever it might be, but it's, this thing called life is kind of cool.
How did you, because it's like the oxygen mask, right? How did you make that cut off? And then how do you redirect people?
And again, it comes, I compliment and appreciate Gino taught me about structure. And I used to avoid structure like the plague, like a lot of us visionaries. And I realized if it's structure around who matters most and what matters most, structure's great. And I used to think if I put too much structure in that there wouldn't be time for inspiration, magic, creativity, love, spontaneity, and intuition. And I've realized that within a structure, there's actually more opportunity for that. And so to put certain disciplines in place for me, so I'm not going to say every morning, but most mornings I spend just about 15 minutes. It's kind of my meditation. It's called the 331. And I just get in my jacuzzi and do a little breathing for about 5 minutes. And then I think about the three things that matter most. What are my top three impactful action items, the important things, not just the urgent. And then the one, if it were up to me. And that's an I am statement. And so when I slow down and say, okay, what matters most to me is today, it's a great marriage, making a big difference with great clients, and being a great dad. And then my top three action items that are impactful might be 5 notes of gratitude, calling my mom, working out, whatever it might be, not just, taking care of that client. Those we still have to do those things, but too often we get, as Covey would talk about, we're in the urgent world and survival mode and not in the important part. So to help people to slow down and just think about really what does matter most. And a lot of people don't know. And so, okay, well, if you did know, what would that look like? And so to me, it's about making time for myself and asking myself questions. If I slow down, either my head, my heart, my spirit has some amazing answers. So if I just slow down to listen, it's amazing what happens. And a lot of people are afraid of that. And it can be scary. And yet, I talk about learning. Our number one lifetime expander in our book is creating great relationships. So I'm practicing on how to have a great relationship with you, which is my verbiage, listening to understand, not respond, speak for myself and not speak for you. And so as I do that, I'm practicing on how to have a great relationship with you. So that way, when I have a fiery second to say something to my daughter or my wife or an employee, I've got it in me on how to, slow down, don't react, speak from, accountable verbalization. And then I'm now got it in me when I have a fire relationship. And then who's the greatest relationship of all? It's with ourselves. Mm-hmm. Who's the biggest bully I've ever met is me to myself. So if now I've learned how to not judge you and not interrupt you and not use the words should and better and exaggerations, I'm now shifting the conversation in my head from, am I a good dad? Am I a good leader? Am I making a difference in the world, to I am? And ours is little I, big M, TM, that it's basically shifting that conversation, because verbiage reflects consciousness. So if in here it's like, why am I always late? How come this always happens to me? And I'm the victim, to, hey, it happened. What's my role in it? What can I do differently next time? Can I forgive? How cool is that? And so if that's now part of my vocabulary in my head and my chatter, then my heart starts to believe it, and vice versa. So it's a little shift. Fake it till you make it, right? So it's helping people just to slow down, ask themselves some questions. And I love it. It's like, well, I don't know. Well, if you did know. And it's amazing how people are like, oh, well, then I would have this. And then it's to write it down and then share it with people.
Yep.
And so we have a thing called the I Planner. So I share, every quarter, I'll share my planner with the things that matter most to me, my top impactful action items this quarter, who matters most, and then my great gift, which is what I'm great at and love. And I give energy, get energy. And I share that with people that are important to me and then get feedback. So when I do that, it's like, okay, this is who I am. And someone might say, well, you forgot about this, or what about that? And it's hard at first to say, hey, what do you think? And people are like, are you something wrong? Are you having a health issue? Or, what's going on? And it's like, you know what? I'm evolving. And so as I get it out of my head, get it onto a piece of paper, share it with those I love, get feedback, and also ask for people to, nudge me and give them permission to call me out, to say, hey, you said you were going to do this. How can I help you to get there? And again, it's hard to exist and have a great life of peace, joy, and freedom on my own. But if I share it with my wife, I share it with my kids. I actually have a vision board that I have a cartoonist that every 10 years, right? So I had a vision board for the last 15 years, and I kind of got to the end of it. And that was basically raising our kids. And now that they are moving on, it's like, what's my next vision board? So it's something that I look at and see and say, wow, look at how far I've come, as opposed to, I'm fucked up today, And this morning I got on the wrong side of the bed, didn't get a good night's sleep. The AC didn't work at the office. It's raining. I was in a pissy mood.
Yep.
And yet the people around me are like, yeah, it sucks, but how can I help you? And I was like, I don't want to go to work today. And only things on my agenda today were things I wanted to do. I was coming here. I interviewed someone for my podcast, had a great session with a potential new client. And it was like, this is a great day. And I'm pissed about it.
You're pissed about it.
And so again, I was like, okay, I am mad. I am frustrated. And as I vented that to myself and a couple trusted people, it's like, okay, these are princess problems. It's I'm pretty healthy. My kids are good. My relationship with my wife is good. It's like, and my wife this weekend, she was kind of shared how she was really frustrated. And I took it very personally. And I'm like, I'm here to make her happy. And then as we're growing, I was like, okay, she doesn't want me to try to solve it. She doesn't want me to judge her. I just gave her a hug and I hear you and feel you. And she wakes up the next morning. She's like, wow, I feel so much lighter. Thank you. And even then today, she sent me an audio and it's like, wow, I'm here for you. And I'm like, I'm good. I just needed to share it.
Yeah.
And feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so important. As you're saying that, it's like, I recognize it in me. I'm that glass half full, or we can always refill the glass, or like always the, energetic positive one, always spinning the positive things. But then sometimes I'm going through it, right? I don't feel like being that guy. I feel like just sharing what's going on inside my head, or just moping around for a minute, right? And but because you set a precedence of being this high energy.
And that's to ourselves.
It's to ourselves, because you said that.
It may or may not be for others, right?
It's that realization that I put myself in that box.
I need to be positive, right?
Yeah. And if I'm not positive, I'm bringing everybody down, right? Or like, but then I've been in situations where I'm like down and people are like, wow, what's going on?
Right.
And they're like, notice right away,
Right.
And again, I think I put myself in that box as like, oh, they think there's something wrong with me, versus this is how I feel and I need to be here with it for a second.
Right. And like we said earlier, if I just see someone on the street, I'm not going to dump what's going on.
Yeah.
Hey, things are good. Okay, cool. But if it's someone that I do have a trusted relationship with, that I can go there. And even I mentioned my son, with this one girl, it's like, I was about to say, yeah, but you got a great life. And it's like, and I said, you know what? It's okay to feel sad. And he calls the next day. He's like, I had a great day. And, so and he knew it wasn't the right thing, but he still felt sad.
Oh, absolutely.
And he felt safe to call us. It's like, oh, that's amazing.
Awesome.
We're always here for you. Yeah.
It's awesome. And I love that, catching it, because we do want it, especially as parents. It's like, oh, it's going to be great. You have a great life.
I failed as a parent if you're not happy. It's
exactly.
There's pressure.
There's pressure. And guess what? We're not going to make it. Right. They're going to have their emotions, and just like us.
That's life, right?
Man, this is awesome. I love this conversation. So tell me more about iMatters and what you're doing right now, because I know that you've had a kind of a major transition recently.
Yeah, I was an EOS implementer for the last almost 10 years, and that was a great landing space for me as I sold my last business, and I wasn't quite ready to launch iMatter, and my kids were younger, and especially with my daughter being in robotics and in band, and my son in travel baseball, that took a lot of time, and it was all amazing. So that was a cool place for me to be without having to grow something or create something. And so now, as that stage is coming to a close, or has come to a close, it's like, what next? And so we birthed iMatter 20 years ago, which is a life operating system. And so we've got the training videos, and we've got, you can download the tools, and so it's all there. And so now it's like, what's next is getting iMatter out to the world, and we're doing it through communities. And so the first community that we're focused on, because I'm known in that community, and I'm still one of those, is the visionaries. And so we have a thing called a visionary forum. And so that is a place for visionaries to transform and be vulnerable, learn how to create great relationships, and to grow exponentially together. And so that's been amazing. And then we're going to ultimately, I have a thing called iMatter for Kids, which is the next community. So visionaries are just big kids. So I guess I like working with kids. And so it's that first, and then iMatter for Kids. And so the book is done, the video is done, and all these have been kind of hobbies up to now. And I love it. And so, but now we're turning it into a business. And that's not something that I'm great at by myself. But now it's time to partner with people and bring some people on who are good at things that I'm not, and to turn it into a real business. So iMatter is a life operating system. There's an online course. We're creating, again, peer groups and communities. And right now we're starting with visionaries. And that's been so amazing to help visionaries to know and act like they matter, and to let go of the guilt, because being a visionary is pretty fucking cool. Where it's like, we had someone we have a visionary summit twice a year, which is 48 hours of all things visionary. And we have 3 amazing thought leaders who are visionaries, who come and not only teach, but they're also participants for the 48 hours. And so recently we had someone stand up at the end with tears in their eyes and said, I'm kind of sad that I like myself more when I'm here with you than I do at home or at business. And it's like, wow. And I get it. And we're like, well, why is that? He's like, because I feel like I can be with me without guilt or expectations. And it's like, wow. And so again, they're practicing on that. And we're just like, be you, man. And it's not easy, especially when we were taught to do certain things. We have our own expectations of ourselves.
Yep.
So iMatter is, again, it's similar to like an EOS on the business side. It's for life. It's, again, asking myself questions, writing them down, sharing them, putting it on a plan, sharing it with other people, having a plan around it. And again, not to over structure it or over process it, but to then learn and grow. And with the Visionary Forum, it is a place to, our rally cry is Viva la Visionary. And so a lot of times the visionaries, we're kind of the brunt of a lot of jokes within the business world. Oh, there goes Bob chasing squirrels. And oh, he can't sit still. And oh, another crazy idea. And I've gotten that my whole life.
Yeah.
And so again, I'm not just a visionary in my business, I'm a visionary in life. And so to create I Matter to help me to know and act like I matter, and then to create this community called the Visionary Forum, it's a chance for me to again, put myself out there and to share and have ideas, and people go, that's awesome. How can I help? And once it becomes a real project or a business, yeah, we need to attract people who are going to be the naysayers to say, okay, let's not spend all of our money, or let's not focus on the wrong things. But Unscatter the Chatter, we have 7 lifetime expanders that as I'm being these things and creating these things, it helps me to expand my life. So it's creating great relationships. It's to choose my tude. So again, we talked about the negative emotions, and it's okay to share it, but a lot of times it is a choice.
Absolutely.
Like today it was raining and whatnot, and I vented a little bit, but then it's like, okay, I'm not going to get stuck in it. So to choose getting out of the right side of the bed. The third one is to realize what matters most, which I've mentioned. And so everything can't matter most. So if my marriage matters most, what am I doing about it? And am I spending time with her and imagining a great life with her and getting home for happy hour today in front of the fire with her? And there's nothing more important to me than that. It's to clarify who I am. So who am I? And there's a lot of ways to get to that point, but it's, I'm a visionary, I'm a husband, I'm a teacher, but at the end of the day, I am a human being, not a human doing, and being present. And then it's to live my legacy today. So Dan Sullivan has a thing called a retirement trick. And so how old are you going to be when you die? What if you got an extra 20, 30, 40 years? What would you do with that time? And the retirement trick is to do those things, and that'll probably give you that extra time.
Wow,
So living my legacy today, it's not, well, as soon as I have 10 million in the bank, well, as soon as this happens, like, well, how do I want to be remembered? And why not be that today? And oh, by the way, I'm probably going to go get the 10 million in the bank when I'm being myself. And then the last expander is to be regardless. And that's to be present regardless. So even if it is raining, or I didn't get that account, or my daughter is unhappy today or sick or whatever, it's like, you know what? To be present regardless. So those are the expanders. We've got 7 tools in there. There's a little bit of our story. And then the title, and this is about, again, using community. We were pretty much done with the book a couple years ago. And in our EO group, we had a book publisher come in, and we did a workshop, and she kind of would say, hey, I stalked you, and you could write a book on this, and you could write a book on that. And I stood up, and I'm like, yeah, my book's pretty much done. And most of the people knew what it was. And I said, yeah, the title is I Matter, the time is now, and the answers are inside. And it was kind of crickets. And one of the guys who's a great friend, he looked up, he goes, that title fucking sucks, dude. And it's like, okay, cool. And we workshopped it.
I love honest people.
Right? Oh, it was great. And he was right. I mean, and so we workshopped it, and it's like, okay, what's the issue? And the issue is, there's so much, we're being bombarded by so many messages that we're scattered. And there's so many things that are going on, whether it be with social media or our parents, our kids, our businesses. And now that we can work remotely, when do we have our own lives? It kind of never ends.
Absolutely.
And so most of that chatter coming from the outside is you don't look pretty enough. You weigh too much. He's got this house and you don't. So most of it's not positive. And then in here, most of it's not positive in our heads. And so it's so then we knew it was Unscatter, something around that. And later that day, Cheryl, my wife, came up with it's Unscatter the Chatter. And it's like, I love it. And so that's been a great rally cry to Unscatter the Chatter. And again, as I'm teaching it, people are using it back on me, which is awesome. And that's how I'm learning.
That's the best, yeah.
Yeah. So it's elevate your mind and expand your impact. So if my mind is not positive, and if I do have these negative emotions kind of gnawing at me, it's hard for me to elevate my mind. So again, as David Hawkins says, it's okay to experience and let it go and elevate to a higher vibration, a higher consciousness. It's literally a palpable thing. And as I raise mine, I'm helping you sitting here, and you're helping me. And then as our vibrations is raising, we're helping people who aren't even in this room.
Yes.
It is energetically, and that's expanding our impact on the world. So that's iMatter is our company. Unscatter the Chatter is the book, which, again, I'm still learning and I'm not perfect on that. And yet it is a tool that I put out there because that's my craft, is helping to know and act like I matter.
It's amazing. How many people are visionaries touching in their lifetime?
Oh, it's tens of thousands.
I love that empowering the empowerers type.
Right. And it's not how many people we lead, it's how many leaders we create.
Yeah.
So I have in my head, I probably made up these numbers, but I think at any one given time, a visionary can influence 10,000 people. Between our employees, our vendors, our clients, through social media, our relatives. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So that's where my goal is to hit 150 people in the Visionary Forum. We're at about 50 right now. We'll get to 150 in a year and a half. But that's a lot, 150 times 10,000. And then we'll deal with it from there. I used to be like, we got to get to 5,000. And it's like, okay, let's get to that community of 150. And it may be 10 different communities of 150, but we'll deal with that later. Not worry about it later. And so ultimately, how many people do we affect? And so it's not just, on social media, look at what I'm eating for breakfast. But it is sharing not only the great things that are happening, but being transparent and vulnerable. I do a fair amount of video blogs, and a lot of them are, here's what I'm dealing with today. And people are like, wow, you're being open and honest. And that's how people can relate. And so it's not, look at how everything's perfect. So it's amazing how many people we affect.
It's really cool too. I would imagine, especially with visionaries, because I know that's a lot of people that are on the podcast, and it's like vulnerability can be really tough, especially when a lot of times we don't feel like we're enough. Right?
Yeah.
Like it's that constant filling that void and
the
driving
imposter
the imposter syndrome. And so you can just get crazy with that.
Yeah, it's interesting. And so Dr. Doug Brackman wrote Driven, and he's a psychologist who did a study and I don't know exactly, but I think he said 7 or 8% of us are driven. And so we can't sit still. We have addictive personalities. We're trying to prove ourselves, and we have a different gene.
Yep.
And a lot of it also is imposter syndrome. And when he and I first started talking, I'm like, I don't have that because I'm pretty confident in who I am. And yet, why do I keep, I have a hard time sitting still. And when do I ever celebrate? And that's another thing, is to celebrate each day our wins and what are we grateful for. But it is just amazing how that drive to just, I've got to keep proving myself. And it's like, proving myself might just be, I had 3 great conversations today. I might not have made money today, but I had 3, so again, what matters most is I took my call for my son. I called my wife just to say I love her. So these things, my mom turns today 93.
That's awesome. And Happy birthday.
Thank you. Happy birthday, Mom.
Yeah.
And she is so funny because like when I thank her for what she's done for me, we lived in a good neighborhood. I'm like, who fucking chose the neighborhood?
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know if she's truly starting to listen, but I think it's even my vibration of gratitude, not just words. And being there, I've been going over there more often, and I'm like, I don't know anything to talk about. It's like, just go and play crossword puzzle. And she's an angel for how many people she's helped. And so to be present with her is amazing. So I'm so grateful to have her around.
You literally hit the box of everything we talk about on Coffee and Grit. Living with purpose and passion, being present. Especially as entrepreneurs and being driven, it can be so easy to be driving and miss those relationships. Right, miss that time with your mom.
Driving through rush hour.
Yeah,
right.
Your mom's 93. It's easy, and then it's easy to miss that time.
Yep. Yeah, and who knows how much longer? But I feel I've said everything I wanted to her. And so if in fact, I think we all die at some point, but I feel complete.
Yeah.
And with my dad, I didn't. He died 11 years ago. And so after he passed, unfortunately, he was not in any pain until about 6 months before he died. He was 86 and a half when he passed. And I got to spend a fair amount of time with him at the end. But when he passed, I said I wanted to speak at his funeral. And all right, what am I going to talk about? And even at the very beginning of Unscatter the Chatter, the opening paragraph is my dad passed away, and I was kind of mad at him because he didn't teach me about life. He didn't teach me about God. He didn't talk about those things. And then as I was doing his eulogy or writing it, I came up with my dad's top 10 lessons. And I said that at the funeral, and people were in tears, and went through all 10. And it's like he didn't talk to me about what life was. He acted it out, and it was to watch every sunset. It was to family first always, great vacations, nature, using sports, so they might seem like they weren't deep, but he taught me a lot. And so it's been amazing even since he's passed. So suspend disbelief. But as I'm learning, I'm healing him and vice versa. And he's like, way to go, dude. You're getting it. So it wasn't like my dad told me these 10 things. And so even writing this book, and then I forget the guy's name who did the last lecture. So he had a class 10 years or so ago at Carnegie Tech or some school. And so he had a lecture, and it was mainly for his kids, but it was lessons learned that he wanted to teach his kids. And they recorded it, and Oprah picked it up, and it sold 10 million copies of his book and whatnot. And I was like, I don't want to wait till I'm about to die or dead.
Yeah.
So I wrote this book, not that I expect my kids to live this, but it's also me to live it, to impart that on them. And so my daughter read it, and we have very similar core values, but we're very different people. She's got an engineer mind. She's a rule follower. She's amazing. But she read the book, and she said, we're a lot alike. And I'm like, really? And she said, yeah, I'm here. And she's figured out for herself what spirituality is, and her purpose is to learn how to create spiritual conversations. And she went from being a mechanical engineer to now a first grade school teacher. It's like, what are you, crazy? And yet,
no kidding.
She said, we're similar because she's here to help kids know that God loves them. And I'm here to help people know that they matter. I'm like, wow, that's heavy. And then when my son listened to it, and I said, so what do you think? He's like, oh, there's a lot of good stuff in there. I'm like, well, thanks. And he's like, well, this is kind of how we live our life. I'm like, exactly. And it's not that I live that way 100% of the time, but one of our tools in there is flip it. And that's the exercise where, again, if I have a anger, fear, frustration, to think about it, sit with it, let it go to a past time. And so he'll be like, well, Dad, flip it. I'm like, well, flip this. But he's really good, and he's taught me about flipping it. And even he was getting braces when he was going in 3rd or 4th grade, and he's like, I can't wait. And I'm like, oh, dude, you're going to hate it. I didn't say that.
Yeah.
But then I was like, so why do you like it? Why are you looking forward to it? He said, I'm sorry. I said, why are you so excited? He said, it's just something to look forward to. I'm like, that's interesting. And so he was looking forward to something. And sure enough, he got braces, and it was no big deal. And then I was taking him to tennis maybe a year later, and I don't want to go. And I'm like, well, why not? He's like, I don't know, it's going to be stupid. And I said, well, you know what a wise person once told me is if you look forward to something, it's apt to turn into something great. And he's like, well, that's kind of cool. Who said that? And I said, you did.
Oh, man.
So
awesome.
I've got 2 heroes in my life, and it's Nick and Grace, my kids. And I'm learning that they're reminding Cheryl and I what we've taught them. And it's just been, it's so amazing. And I'm so proud of them, and that they're still teaching me. And Cheryl and I literally talked about this weekend. It's like, we want to raise our game to keep up with them. And it's not about success. It's about being present and enjoying the moment and loving each other and helping people. And it's a cool ride.
And when that's the lesson you taught your kids, you've won every damn time.
And believe me, I mean, literally a couple of weeks ago, I'm like, I fucking don't get anything done right. And how come we don't have more members? And it's just like, and again, this is where reflection and making time for myself. And so I did do an exercise that said, when I was 25, what would I have deemed to be a successful life? Would have been a great marriage, kids that are making a difference in the world that still want to be around us, to make an impact on a lot of people. It's like, we've already lived it. This is bonus time. And yeah, it's 'cause I used to relate success to money in the bank or net worth, and it's like, oh, you have a bigger house than I do, so I'm not successful. It's like, that doesn't have anything to do with it. If that matters most, that's awesome. And there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
But for me, it is being present with my wife, and we've got such a great future ahead. And we're now just starting to think about what's next. And we've already got our trips planned to go see Nick's playing D1 baseball. And so we've got our trips planned for that. And Grace and her husband are probably going to move somewhere else. So we're going to make sure we're around them. And it's this next 25-year stage is going to be amazing as well.
And it's cool, and it sounds intentional.
Yes, it is. It's amazing.
How can people, I know we have stuff in the notes and stuff,
Yeah.
but how can people get involved with iMatter?
So imatter.com is our website, and it's cool because we came up with that name probably 15 years ago, and someone had the .com, and so I had a marketing company I worked with, and so we went through a big exercise that they put people through, and we're like, it's iMatter. That's the name of the company. So we spent, I think, 10 grand on the domain, but it's imatter.com. And then there's the Visionary Forum. You can find that there, but the visionaryforum.com. You can buy the book on Amazon or on our website. And if you're a visionary who's interested in going to that next level and you're looking for community to elevate yourself, reach out, and we'd love to have a conversation. And again, it's not just about growing this organization, it's about changing the world. I feel like this is, as I mentioned earlier, it's not only our opportunity to help visionaries, it's our obligation to help non-visionaries to understand, what does vision look like? So for my son, it's like, where do you want to do after high school? Well, I don't know. Well, if you did know, what would that be? So he threw something out. We checked it out. No, that's not it. Okay, what about this? And sure enough, he found the perfect place. And it's to teach them it's okay to have vision. It's okay to try stuff and fail, because that's the learning opportunity. So that, to me, is the opportunity for us visionaries now. So if you're interested in learning and growing as a visionary, check us out at the Visionary Forum as well.
It's so awesome, Bob. And I often talk about difference makers. And I talk about my group being difference makers, the people I like to work with and collaborate with being difference makers. And what I look at, there's several things, but one of the main qualifiers is that they're people that have developed a way to serve people based off of the experiences in their life.
Right.
And I see, as listening to your story this whole way, going back to even your childhood, like I see this all being that collection of your life work and how you're helping free other people to make a major impact.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. Life is not easy, but it's joyful, and it's not always fun. But again, I love peace, joy, and freedom, and what does it look like to get there? So those words really mean a lot to me. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's what I see, and at the same time, I love how deep we've gotten, but it's fun too.
Right? Absolutely. Right. Yeah. Well, thank you for your podcast and inviting me on, and whatever I can do to help, let me know.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on out.
All right. Thank you.
My pleasure.